Don't let fatigue defeat you this year. Unleash your true potential with revolutionary Peak Energy Formula Gaming Powder. Peak Energy Formula's groundbreaking formula not only has perfected this healthier alternative to traditional energy drinks, but this magical elixir has been designed to make you feel refreshed and revitalized, no matter what your DM throws at you. Don't settle for mediocrity with mouth-watering premium flavors that make it stand out from your average gaming powders, including Blue Raspberry, Apple Burst, Cool Lemonade, and our favorite, Dragon Balls. Plus, unlike some high-caffeine energy drinks, Peak Energy Formula can offer you a boost without the dreaded crash afterwards. All you need is a shaker and water, and you're ready to go, all for less than £1 per serving. Best of all, you can get 15% off your Peak Energy order right now with promo code ROLLBRIT, plus a free full set of dice with any order using promo code ROLLBRIT. That's ROLLBRIT. So head over to peakenergyformula.com and say goodbye to fatigue and hello to peak performance.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Tired of ads crashing your comedy podcast party? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free comedy to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Hello and welcome to Roll Britannia Parley. I'm Tom and I play a character called Keth in Roll Britannia. In this series, I'm going to be talking to other podcasters, celebrities, and members of the TTRPG community to help along the way with my crewmates from Roll Britannia. Each episode will have a special guest, who could be a lifelong player, a fellow podcaster, a movie maker, or someone who has helped to shape Dungeons & Dragons into the game that we love today. In this episode, we managed to grab a chat with a show that has actually transcended from podcasting into something very funny and exciting. After 3 successful seasons of their podcast, their show was redesigned with collaboration from E1 and Wizards of the Coast and made the leap into actual television. They are, of course, Encounter Party. So, joining me now from Roll Britannia is James, the Dungeon Master.
I'm busy smashing up the studio, I'm sorry.
Excellent. Alex, who plays Derek Normalbeard, the Dwarf.
Hello.
Chip, who plays Jeff Silverbow, the Human.
Hello.
Beautifully creepy. And Paul, who plays Malrus,
the least
the
human answer.
Hello.
How's it all going, everybody?
Not too bad.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. Sorry, I thought we were all going to talk over each other.
I'm really enjoying myself. Everyone's been really nice.
Everyone's been really nice.
Everybody's
It's very cold
now.
in here.
So,
No, I've really enjoyed it. I've been busy binge watching Encounter Party.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yes, I've not had a chance to see any of it yet, and I'm quite jealous.
Boo! Get out!
Oh.
so James actually took the reins on
Just
this
sack
one,
Alex.
as he was very excited indeed to chat to Encounter Party, but mainly because he likes talking to fellow Dungeon Masters. So we let him loose on them. So did you enjoy the chat, James?
I did. I really enjoyed the chat. It was quite exciting to meet some like TV celebrities.
Actual
famous peoples.
They were really, and we say this a lot, but they were really nice.
Yeah,
They were.
It did seem.
Well, they might
They
be.
were really nice.
I had a very long chat with Ned on Discord prior to the interview, and he's a very, very nice chap. And I'm very.
Paul was meant to be
gutted
there,
that
but
I
Paul was
didn't.
poorly sick.
Yeah.
He seemed like a very genuine but passionate individual, and I really like that.
Oh god.
And they clearly really love D&D as well.
Yeah, I love what they do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. They really think about everything, don't they? They really think about all the little nuances and details.
Yeah, I think hearing about their vision and the big master plan was really really exciting. So yeah,
I can't
From
wait
lounge
for the rest of
to
the
stage TV show, isn't it?
we should. Do we need a big master plan?
Yes, we should.
season. I've
We
got
should
a
have
master
one.
plan.
I thought that was the scribblings on Paul's wall. The ones connected by bits of string. Either that or I'm in trouble because I'm on there.
Not a whiteboard.
Yes.
There's nothing on it though.
Our master
Shall I
plan
just
is
write
currently
big
blank.
master plan?
Put master plan at the top of that whiteboard, and we're halfway there.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
start, isn't it?
Not much
Having a master plan.
subscribers in
What's the plan?
Step
Audio
1,
show.
start podcast. Step
Step
2,
two,
question mark, question mark, question mark. Step 3,
It's a
success.
free TV show. Yeah.
Well,
How the South
Global
Park method.
domination.
Yes.
I think it's time now to push the play button and enjoy James chatting all things D&D with the guys from Encounter.
Let us listen, Tom.
That's not the play
Let's
button.
go!
Thank you everyone for joining today for this very special Parley episode where I'm joined by two of the amazing creators and stars of the show, Encounter Party. So, I think it'd be worth introducing. We have Brian David Judkins and Ned Donovan. How are we both?
Morning. Well, morning for us.
Yeah, good morning. It's great to be here. Doing pretty well. That's the most energetic intro we've had yet.
Yes.
I always do energetic intros.
We appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much. So, I mean, it's a bit of an honor for me to sort of meet you guys, not quite in 3D, still kind of on screen, but like interactive, which is cool because I've been sort of binging your show, which has been awesome. I've really enjoyed it.
Can I ask how far you've gotten?
Well, I've just got sent the next set of episodes. So,
You shoot us a text after this recording when you watch a little more.
yeah, I will do. Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed the first set of episodes that I got to watch. I think for me it was really cool to see. I mean, a totally different take again on a D&D campaign, totally different to how I play, but also so different from what people are used to seeing with like Crit Roll and Dimension 20 and stuff. I think the energy, the vibe and everything for me was really, really different. So, I mean, I guess let's start with the first question. I mean, this is open to both of you. How did it feel really to transition into that kind of TV game rather than podcasting? How was that for you?
We get this question every interview, and the answer is there's very little that's different. This was always the aim. When Ned and I first made the original podcast, what people didn't know at the time was that was secretly a proof of concept that we could use to pitch to studios. We just, despite all of our skills and our access to resources, we just didn't have anywhere near the sort of funding to create a show. And in fact, Wizards of the Coast and Entertainment One bumped our production cost opportunities by like 2 to 3 times what we were initially speccing. So while the production itself was bigger and having a bunch of people on set and being physically present as opposed to just present in audio, that was super exciting to see that vision realized. But as far as the sort of like the sort of taste and feel and vibe, it's still in Counterparty, and that was exciting to us when we got to editing and knew that. But Ned talks all the time about the fact that because you got cameras on you, you don't get to check out. Like you don't get to.
I'm so tired.
Yeah, you don't get to take a break when it's not your turn and just sort of pass off. You have to be reacting. It's very strange because you have to be present so the camera can capture you, while at the same time you need to take a back seat so other people can have their moment. So I would say that is like the distinct difference. But as far as the vibe for people who've been with us for the full journey, Encounter Party has never lost its identity whatsoever.
Well, and we have people who found us through the TV show who are now listening to the podcast between weeks. And we keep getting these messages be like, how is it the same? Like, how does it vibe all the same? Like, we really worked hard to perfect a filming and performance style that was true in the podcast as well, to really like lock in. For me, I mean, Brian and I talk about it a lot, but when we set out to make the show in December 2018 was the first phone call we had about it. So exactly 5 years ago. And that was when Brian pitched me the first idea of what we iterated into the idea for this TV show that we then went and made as a podcast. And when we were casting the show, we did a casting call across the United States. And through our own networks as professional actors and through friends and things like that, we just put out a big call and we interviewed a ton of people and auditioned a ton of people. And after we found our cast, one of the things we said to them is like, look, the goal of this show is that this podcast does well enough that we can pitch it to television and make a television show. And if you're willing to get on that journey with us, like, it's going to take a minute. Like, that's a long process. And the best feeling of this whole show is that we all got on set, and I think it was Landry Fleming who punched me in the arm and said, nailed it. Like, the very first thing we pitched her worked. And that, I think, is the feeling that I sit with the most, is like, we had an idea and we were two guys making a show in a living room, and said the goal of this show in a living room is to get us to television, and getting on set and then getting it filmed and then getting into post for that and then actually airing that show 5 weeks ago. That to me is the feeling that I'm holding on to the most, that like the idea successfully went from two guys on a phone call to a television show 5 years later.
And I feel, yeah, we're the show creators, and working together with Ned has been an absolute joy. But also, we had a lot of faith from our castmates and people who stuck with us and were able to, accept compensation where they could and donate the time where we could. And that's just sort of, that's sort of the narrative on how these things go, is you gotta commit up front.
Yeah.
And we were really happy that almost the entire original cast was able to come with us. David's been with us minus one season.
And shout out real quick to Eddie Cooper, who booked Broadway and became unavailable to us.
we would not have been able to preserve, I think, this quality and this feel and maintain our identity if we lost these people along the way.
Yeah,
it's really amazing, like that you've gone on that journey, and in 5 years as well. So, maybe there's hope for my little show yet. Maybe we'll be on the schedule with you.
I will admit, I really like your show, and I've been a person who's listened to your show for a minute. So,
Thanks so
it's
much.
Actually really great when I got outreached. Is that the word? Reached out to. When I was reached out to be like, oh, I love Roll Britannia. That's great for me.
Thank you so much. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because I watched it and I was like, I wondered. So in the early shots of the season, you see the cast in the sort of prequel episode bit. You see your cast all coming into that studio, and it looks really impressive. The set's incredible. Is that the first time they saw it? Is that the first time you guys saw it, or was there sort of what was that process?
Brian got to see
it. I got there about a week before everyone else to do production. And then showrunner John Platt came up with the idea to film all that, because he's done a bunch of TV beforehand. So, yeah, I don't know what that was like for the actors, but I had been there for a week already.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. So one of the things we talk about a lot on these podcasts is that when Brian and I were pitching the show, and then through all of pre-production, as a cast member, I'm not allowed to know anything. I produce a lot of content. I've made movies, I've made music, I've made podcasts, I've made a ton of stuff. And I've never produced a thing where I don't actually know what's happening. And that was even true. We arrived in Los Angeles to film the show, and we were like, hey, let's head over to set. And showrunner John Platt was like, no, you're not allowed on set. And I was like, oh. And then we got there day one, and they ushered us into a room, and there were like walls of people blocking windows and doors. And they like ushered us into a side room where we all put on our costumes. And then they were like, all right, we're going to take you to set one at a time in alphabetical order by character name. And we were like, oh. So yeah, that was everything about this show is very minute one. And we did that on purpose because we've always wanted our show to feel for the audience like it feels for us. And so seeing the set for the first time is the audience seeing the set for the first time, right? We didn't do a traditional session zero. We built all our characters with Brian in a silo, where I would come in with ideas of a character, and then we would build out mechanics, and then Brian would go away and work with other actors, and then come back and say, hey, Ned, this thing in your backstory, what if it was this? And I'd say, why? And he'd say, I can't tell you. And I'd be like, okay. And it was just like Brian weaving together the tale. So also the opening moment of episode 1 is the first moment any of us met any of the other characters, that we knew anyone's name, that we knew anyone's art besides getting on set. Like, we didn't know anything. And I joke about it a lot, but Brian then didn't tell us the opening of the show, which is in the log line. So I don't think it's a spoiler. There's a vision. The opening moment is a roll initiative. They see something that they couldn't have expected. But Brian told me we were starting on a boat. So if you watch my face in the opening moment of this show, like my jaw goes slack and I do one of the worst acting jobs of all time because I'm legitimately like, what is happening here? Because nothing in the show is preordained for the cast so that the reactions of the audience mirror that of the table. And that was a very specific design and production choice that Brian and I made many, many years ago.
Wow. That's cool. I love the realism of that with the cast coming in. The reactions just feel so genuine. And Brian, I guess that sort of process of being the DM and having all these secrets from everyone. I definitely relate to that because there are things that the guys just don't know. It's so good. But I guess I've kind of wanted to get a bit of a feel from you, and this is totally like me trying to give you some advice here. Is as the DM for not just now a podcast, but in a live show, how do you balance the creativity and the gameplay of D&D, but also make sure that everyone doesn't end up just going and doing shopping for 4 hours at a time? How do you balance the storytelling aspects of it with actually playing D&D?
So I think that just comes down to understanding what the show's about and having a team we've been together with for so long. We're all on board on what the point of Encounter Party is. We are not an open-ended campaign. We are story focused. And because we got the team that we got, when we were casting everyone, we were like, look, we need expert players, right? We need people who really know this game inside and out. But we also need people with improvisation experience or really accomplished performers, because that's going to save us the most time. When we decided we were trying to make a show to get it down to an hour, time is money, and we have to stay on target and we have to stay focused. So I like to think that they listen to me. I like to hope that they take cues. But because we all know the show that we're making, everyone stays on target. And it's my job to create a very clear goal. We're not trying to keep it on rails. There are moments that have happened every season where I do need to step away and do some rewrites and refocus. But it's important for people to understand that Dungeons and Dragons is a game that we all love and enjoy. But Encounter Party is not a show about people playing Dungeons and Dragons. It is a fantasy fiction show that uses Dungeons and Dragons to tell the story. So we know that by the end they ordered 20 episodes. We ended up with 22, but they ordered 20 episodes. So my job is to write a campaign that can fit within 20 episodes. And so everyone being on target and everyone being that focused. It also helps because of the way that we have 6 players now instead of 5, which is not easy. I've never run a party with 6 people before, ever in my life. So because everyone has these stories that are kind of interweaving, it also helps because everyone's individual focus time is a little bit shorter. And so they have to maximize that effort. So when it's your time to shine or it's your time to contribute, you don't get the time to just sort of explore the world. You're diving into your particular story, which helps kind of keep all that much tighter.
Yeah, I like that. I guess one of the things that I really liked, and I think was a really nice plot technique or just a DMing technique even, was really early on. You took a player, you took someone aside, and you had this. I think it might have been you, Ned.
It was me.
You took someone aside, and you had this full scene. Now I have 2 questions about it.
Yeah.
One, was that genuinely totally separate from everyone else in the game, so they genuinely had no idea?
Yeah.
And 2, what was the concept behind how did you sort of think through that kind of idea of doing something? Because I guess in a traditional D&D game, that would be conversations that happen outside of the game during the weeks or days or however long it is between those games, you'd have those conversations. But what was the inspiration for actually, just saying, well, hold on, I'm going to leave everyone to one side and say, we need to have this moment here that is going to, let the cat among the pigeons, or the kenku among the, and I really loved that as a concept.
I know
how did that come about?
I know Ned plays a kenku, but there's something you just said that I always think I just always think about Flick and kenku in general as kookaburra because I love those birds. So we used to do that for the podcast too. We would send people out of the recording area so we could have private stuff on mic and things like that too. I am a giant fan of asymmetric gameplay, and I think in order to keep up like with what Ned said earlier about the fact that we're really trying to make sure that the audience has the exact same experience the players are having, to make them feel tethered in the same way, you're going to get a more genuine performance out of people if they don't know. And one of the things about the show that we're trying to avoid is a thing that inherently happens in Dungeons and Dragons more than anything else is people negotiate the game, they strategize the game, and then they play the game. And that is the biggest plague of DMs ever. The 1 hour to figure out how to walk through the door when the answer is just open the door. Just open the door and roll for traps. So being able to do that does several things. One, it creates a wider space. It gets us away from the table, which is something that you just don't do at home. When we're making the show, we're trying to think about how many things can we turn on their heads, how many spaces can we explore, how many things can we heighten, how can we take sort of natural given aspects of the game and do something different with it. It also creates private moments, as you'll see throughout the show, as characters who have private moments quite literally away from other people. The actual space itself, the credit to that goes to John Platt, who's the showrunner. He came to us with this idea about what if we had this high top away from everybody where we could do private moments, and it worked out really well. It was a complete coincidence. It ended up being Ned. We weren't trying to do any sort of like private show creator thing. It just happened to be that his character was best for that moment. But I'm going to make a weird shout out to Roll20. But they're the only people I found who they have a system where you can like just turn off everyone else's hearing so that you can only speak to particular players and stuff like that. And that type of private information is great for player performance, but it's also really, really good because now the audience has information that the players don't have. So now people who are fans of, say, Flick in the first episode or are feeling connected to him, now they get to own that fandom a little bit more. Or people who are kind of completely turned off by that character might start accepting them because they're aware of private information and stuff like that too. So it's a great writing technique, and it's also something that if you're writing a fiction show, you just put that person in a scene, you know what I mean? But when you're doing a live capture, it was a really clever way to get a lot of cool writing tricks by just literally sending them to a different part of the studio.
Yeah, and then another thing that we really try to focus on there is we have a what am I trying to say here? So we try to make a show that we always say feels like the most heightened version of the game you know and love, right? And so when we were in pre-production and we were coming up with all the ideas, obviously, like, we work in theater, we work in TV, we work in film, like we were talking to people who do this. So the first questions come up like, oh, are we going to reenact scenes? Will there be costumes, right? Will we add like swords and do a little sword fight? And the answer is like, no, because that's not what you do generally at home when you play D&D. But what do you do? Well, often you pass private notes, right? The DM will hand a note out, but that doesn't really work well on television unless we like reposition a camera and look over their shoulder and superimpose a text. So how do we do a private note, but on a TV version? We move to a new room, right? Like that was sort of the way we built the show, is everything in our show is achievable at home. Every puzzle that Brian designed, every like thing we are doing is something you could achieve at your home table. It's just that we're doing the heightened TV version of it. And that was very intentional. We wanted to give people ideas for their home games. We wanted to explore this idea, but we didn't want to add, massive amounts of animation, or we didn't want to do things that weren't the game, because our show has always been about connecting with gamers, yes, but also something we're very proud of is during the run of our first season of the podcast, we did an audience survey, like an unofficial audience survey. And half of the respondents had never played D&D or had never consumed actual play. They had found us through, we had a bunch of fantasy novelists that found us that were telling their fans and things like that. And then right now, I'm the community manager for the show. I run the social media. I handle all the direct messages and emails. And from at least what I can tell with the information I have access to, around 30 to 40% of our current viewers of the TV show are in that exact same boat. And that was a very intentional thing. We want to make the show accessible to the audience in a way that if they don't know the game or they have a preconceived notion of the game, they just get to experience a story and learn the game in real time. We have this YouTuber who's doing these wonderful reactions to our shows. She's awesome. Shout out to Katie Shocks. Go check out Katie Shocks' YouTube. She's this Irish content creator. She's awesome. And she says in her first video, I'm a big fan of Kari Payton. That's how I found the show. I'm going to react to the show. And she said, I've never played D&D. I don't know anything about D&D. Let's go. And she gets really into the story. And then I was watching her reaction to the third episode last night. And someone says something and she goes, we'll do a perception check. She's learning the game in real time because of the way the information is presented. And that only works if you're presenting the game the way people know it. And so that was important to us. And that's why that room achieves such a useful goal, because it does something so many home games do, but in a very specific television way.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I think getting new people into the game is what this is all about for us as well. It's, we see a lot of people at the shows we go to and we get feedback from our, similar sort of thing. It's just people who've never played before who enjoy. And for me, I think it's really important that we get new people in. So, I think a quick question for you then is, in terms of where Encounter Party's been and where it's going, how has, from your point of view, the show been? How has it impacted the D&D community for you, and how would you like to see it go forward?
I think right now we're still, I think, on the cusp of how much of an impact we're going to have. The podcast was really, really great, but at the same time, we were using it as a proof of concept. So a lot of that was, we were experimenting in some things. You'd never know because all the experiments worked. So, but we were, at least from my end, I was testing things in format structures and episode structures and stuff to sort of see what are we going to be able to do with the TV show. And so a lot of that also was us. I use the word manipulation. It can sound so evil, but we were trying to manipulate the market and educate the market to sort of this way of possibly doing things. So on one hand, we're getting a lot of great feedback. The community has been very receptive in the beginning, but at the same time, it's a little strange because we were so intentionally sort of behind a curtain as we were developing, because we wanted to come out with we wanted people's first impression to be that opening line of what's going on. So this, I'm sure Ned he's a little bit more in touch with the community right now in his role.
There's sort of two answers to that question for me, maybe even three. So I'm sort of connected in a bunch of different spaces. I'm a huge consumer of actual play content, D&D content. I am obviously a producer in the space, and I'm pretty well integrated with some of the more indie creators in this community. And I kind of check in with them a lot. And I think there's a lot of different answers. At the consumer level, I think what's been really exciting is watching people come to the game, come to actual play. We have a Discord server where we have people saying, hey, I'm caught up on the podcast and the TV show. What else should I check out? And we have people in there being like, oh, this show you might like. It's a little different than Encounter Party. You get a new flavor, right? We're very excited to be like a welcomer and a connector of people into the space. From a creator standpoint, right? People like you and us, people in the tabletop community who are making things. A lot of people are cautiously excited at the idea of a television program of this kind, because if we can crack the code there, we're showing that the indie community really does have that value that many companies have been searching for at the celebrity level, right? Like, yes, Kari Payton is a massive celebrity in the TV film world, but the six of us from the original podcast, like, you know us from the podcast. My brother-in-law did recognize David Lee Huynh, our cast member, from his one episode on Blue Bloods, which I found very fun. But he texted me and he said, "Is that one guy from Blue Bloods?" I was like, "It is," but what a crazy thing to call. But so we have people who are really excited. We were a SAG show, right? Like, we are a union television program, which is different from a YouTube series. It's different from a podcast. Like, that is a different thing. And if our show can crack that code, that opportunity gets created for future programs across the board, both in D&D and in other gaming systems. And then thinking about, like, at kind of a third level here, like, what the impact we're seeing in the D&D community, kind of in gamers, is honestly, a lot of people haven't yet caught on to what it is we're doing, because in their heads, all actual play is the same. And one of the reasons we don't call ourselves an actual play, we call ourselves a television show, is because we're making something different than what you know and love. But if you look at the comments of people who haven't checked out the show, but are judging it from a trailer or judging it based on previous experiences they've had with actual play, they're asking, like, why isn't it on YouTube? And the answer is, like, because it's a TV show, not a YouTube channel. Like, why isn't it on Twitch? Because it's a TV show, not a live stream, right? Like, they are asking to put it in the box of what they have known in the past. And slowly we're seeing people in the comments of these videos be like, "Hey, I finally checked it out. This thing is awesome." Like, I do want to point out the most negative review I have received publicly, and people love to message me things they don't like about the show before they watch it, and then they like to message me once they've watched it. And the most negative comment we've received on the show publicly to me in a direct message was, "I prefer a grittier actual play." Like, that's not a negative comment.
No.
The reviews are so overwhelmingly positive from all corners. Every time we get someone in who is asking, "Why isn't it on YouTube?" and I say, like, "Hey, it's not, it's on Plex. Here's the link." They go and watch it and they excitedly live text me about it. Like, it is so cool how quickly people come on board once they start watching. And it's just that right now we're in this mode of, one, we want more episodes on demand so people can get more flavor when they finally get into the show. But two, we're just getting the word out, and we're getting the word out that it's different than an actual play you've known. You know, we say this a lot, and I've had someone accuse me of it being lip service, but I genuinely mean it. Like, Brian and I never set out to make a show that people would talk about in terms of better or worse. That's not interesting. Like, that's subjective. We can't do anything about it. I don't care. But we always want to make a show that feels new, different, and like you've never seen it before. If we can get you to say that it is, even if you say, "I didn't like it, but man, was that unique," we nailed it. And that is what I think people haven't quite caught on to yet in the specific D&D community, where they're saturated with this kind of content, where they know what they're getting with this kind of content. And the assumption is they're getting more of that same thing, and they're not. And as we slowly proliferate through that community, we're seeing more and more people saying, like, "Wow, this is new. Wow, this is different. Wow, I've got ideas for my own show." And that, to me, is the impact that I've always wanted. I would say we are having more of an immediate impact on content creators who are excited at the potential for what this show could do for that market, and frankly, non-D&D people who are discovering an entirely new way of telling stories. And the D&D community, I would actually say, has been the slowest to kind of, like, get on board, which in my mind is because there's a lot of content that feels like it should be like our show. So they feel like they've already seen it. And it's just, we're getting there.
Oh, it's really interesting that you say, that the D&D community has been probably the slowest adopters of it, because actually, it's something that I really enjoyed watching, to be honest.
I'm so glad to hear that. I can't wait until it is available on demand in the UK.
Yeah, being able to stream it properly without the time pressure.
Man, a decision I have no comment on, but hopefully it happens soon.
So, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I had a question that I like to ask people. Two questions for you, I guess. Is one, firstly, is what is your as D&D aficionados as you are? What is your go-to character? What's your favorite or the character build that you go for at a moment's notice? If you had to join a game right now and you went for your favorite build, what's the build?
That's a terrible question to ask. We too.
I actually do have an answer, Brian.
Oh, you do have a go-to?
Go on, then.
Yeah, and it's funny because this is I have to phrase this question in a way that doesn't do anything to the original podcast if people decide to listen to it. My character in the original podcast, Brevin Ravel, is my go-to character in almost every D&D campaign. He's a human fighter. He's awesome. Battle Master build, and I love that I can walk into any campaign. I know that build back, front, and center. I play it forever. Through Encounter Party, through one-shots we've done, and through other things, I started really playing other builds in earnest, mostly because I was frankly playing so much D&D through the show. I got really sick of that build because we were just so ingrained in it for so long. I have a character right now. I've been in a home game for 8 years with a couple friends of Brian's and mine, Hopper Crane, Bill Heydrich. Shout out to them. Good people. And Hopper has been my longest DM, and I had this character in Hopper's campaign. And after we filmed recorded the first season of Encounter Party, the podcast, I went to Hopper and I was like, I'm so sick of this build. Like, I've just played it into the ground. What else can I do? And we came up with the idea. I wanted to make a fighter sorcerer multi-class that made Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade awesome, because I find them to be useless cantrips 96% of the time. And so we built into the backstory of the character that he had been a sorcerer whose magic had been taken away. And over the last 5 years, we've been hinting at magic coming back to him. And I've been building a multi-class character sheet that the party doesn't know about. And so I've had people be like, you're level 6. Why is your fighter so not good? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'm rolling poorly. And then literally 2 nights ago, the veil got ripped off. And they're like, oh, how long have you been planning this? And we were like, since pre-pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So that's my current favorite character. He's a sorcerer fighter multi-class, specifically designed to make Green Flame Blade awesome.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
I'm a forever GM, so I rarely ever get to play a character class. If I'm jumping into a game, I'm one of those guys that's like, what is everyone else playing? I'm just going to fill in support. That usually ends up being fighters. But as of last year, Ned said I'm not allowed to play fighters anymore.
Can't play fighters anymore.
So start playing other stuff. But I am a giant fan of wild magic mechanics, because I think they are strangely a controlled way to do sort of chaotic stuff. And I think wild magic is an amazing mechanic to force people to be okay with not being unstoppable powerhouses. Like, as a party, you have to acknowledge that bad things are going to happen, or random things are going to happen, and therefore you can't control everything all the time. So Wild Magic Barbarian is very fun for me, and Wild Magic Sorcerer, I would say, are too. But you got to make sure that you're like with a group of people that are okay with that. I'm just jumping in. I'm supporting.
My second quick home game story now is I'm DMing a Rime of the Frostmaiden run with former coworkers of mine from the tech company I used to work for, and we have a Wild Magic Barbarian, and we're using an expanded table that has like 300 options.
Oh, I can top that.
And he got turned into a cat at the start of a combat. And he was just a cat, and he had to run around trying not to die as a cat. And then this cat successfully rolled the final HP hit on a claw slash to kill the big bad guy. And I've never been more angry as a DM. I was like, no, you're a cat. And he was like, yeah, but I take an attack. And he hit, and it does 2 damage, and the thing had 1 HP, and I'm still mad about it.
DMing is great, but if you're ever thinking about DMing, listeners, you must accept that your big bosses will die in the most infuriating way.
Actually, that leads me right nicely on to probably a final question for you. Although I will say, if you do want to take your wild magic to another level, I do have a D10,000 wild magic table that I can send over.
Please send that.
Please
immediately send that.
It's about to make an appearance in the podcast, so I'm very excited. I'm not going to take credit for it. I didn't invent it, but I did discover it on Reddit. So I will. I'll send it your way.
Please do.
So you gave some nice advice there for someone who's if someone wants to be a DM. The question I would normally finish a chat with someone, it would be, for someone who is new to being a DM or someone who's new to being a player, what advice would you give them to A, give it a go, and B, well, same thing, but just get into D&D? Because me as a essentially forever DM, having never played it before we started the podcast and jumping straight into being DM, I regret all those years I wasn't playing. So I guess what would your advice be?
My advice is kind of the same fold twice. I think I actually said it earlier in this interview, is that people tend to problem solve before they act. And that is the nature of the game. Because I think people are nervous about committing and having it not work out. And so you guys spend a lot of time discussing and sort of risk managing what your options are before you actually commit to something. And the truth about the game is good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. The nature of tabletop play and working with a team and story building, the goal of the game is not try and find a way where bad things don't happen. It is let things that are going to happen, and then strategize what to do from that and figure out how to integrate that in the story. So my advice for everyone is talk less, do more. Because you will find it much more engaging, and your stories, those things you do where you go to your friends or you go to the cafeteria or your coworkers and you talk about, hey, wasn't that moment crazy? You can only get those moments after you do something. You can't tell a story about the fact that we all sat around and talked about what could be behind that door. Open the door. And so I would say do more. And then as a DM, if you're thinking about DMing for the first time, get a book. The campaigns that are pre-generated and are available to purchase by Wizards of the Coast, they're really great, and they're going to give you a lot of material. You can run those things for like 2 years if you want to. And that is the best way to educate you. Even if you just get like the starter guide adventure is still fun. That's going to be the best.
Dragon of Icespire Peak is awesome.
Yeah, that is really the best way for you to it does all the prep for you. Everything's ready to go. You just kind of got to read ahead and figure out how to manage that. But as a DM, as far as table engagement, force your players to do more. And the best way to do that is to make them roll dice as much as possible. So don't be afraid of arbitrary dice rolls. A great advice I say, especially because so many young people are playing now, that younger players and teenage players tend to be more chaotic at the table just by their nature. And so when I remember sometimes running a game where we'd have a young guy who was sort of really enthusiastic and sort of aggressive and dominating the table a little bit, is I would just occasionally make him roll a D20 and then he'd roll. And it doesn't matter what it was. If it was good, I'd be like, okay, you're good. And then if it was bad, I was like, he's like, what happened? I'm like, you'll find out later. And then I'll just take the note. And that's a great way to get people to, now they're engaged. Now they're hungry for the reaction, not hungry for the initiation.
Awesome.
For me, it's about Dungeons and Dragons is at its core about telling stories with your friends. That is what the game is. And it's not about winning. It's not about losing. It's not about showing off. It is about telling a story that your friends are going to go home and talk about. I talk about that cat moment. That's crazy. And that happened because of a random thing. And then a guy made a choice, like awesome. And so I always say people get really intimidated by the concept of the game. And I think what they don't know they're intimidated by is the concept of their imagination. Like the game is not that scary, but imaginations are crazy. And so like the real essence of playing D&D is like be a kid, like visualize the moment and then do it and have fun and like actualize your thoughts. And like that's something we're talked out of as adults. And that's something that gets moved away from in our older lives as we pay taxes and, you know, all the fun stuff, rent, mortgage, whatever. And that's where I find when I talk to people who are like, man, I always wanted to get into D&D, but now I'm an adult. Like it's all like, and it's what they're saying is, I don't think I have time to learn the game. But what they actually mean when you dive into it is like, well, I don't think like that anymore. And the answer is like, why not? It's the same reason why I do a lot of like acting classes for colleges and high schools and things like that. And I always say you should go play role-playing games. Like they are some of the best way to up your skills, especially for theater. Like the ability to react in real time, the ability to take information and give it back, like the ability to think on your feet. Those are all skill sets that role-playing games truly cultivate. And so when I talk to people and I say like, if you're looking to get into it, don't try to get into a game. Get excited to tell stories with your friends. The game is designed to give you guardrails for the stories you create. And that to me is what gets people into D&D more than anything else. Is like you can learn the rules as you go as long as you have a basic understanding of a D20 and roll high, roll low. Like beyond that, you can kind of wing it. And that's my biggest advice is like get excited to tell stories with your friends in this unique way. And if you check out Encounter Party, I hope that makes you think like, oh, the mechanics can sort of like melt into the background and the story can come to the fore. Like telling stories with your friends is what the game is for. Some people love the war game aspect, and let's go. That is a more rule-based mechanic system. But if at your core, you just want to dive into the game, it's all about imagination.
There is a really great interview by Wizards of the Coast with Chris Perkins and Todd Kendrick, who are Chris Perkins is one of the head story designer architects for Wizards of the Coast, and Todd works in the media side of the company. Todd interviews Chris to talk about DMing, and then just naturally in the course of the interview, Todd talks about being a player, and it's like a half-hour interview that does a great job of talking about problems that the table will experience and how to work through negative table dynamic. So I would go seek that out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, look, I'm conscious time is getting on, so I just want to say a massive thank you so much for taking the time in your very early morning to actually speak to me. And yeah, it's been fascinating, and thank you so much for sharing some of the insights to the show and your personal insights about gaming. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. So say thank you very much, Brian and Ned. It's been awesome, and I really look forward to getting stuck into the next set of episodes of Encounter Party.
Thanks for having us, and I know you're here to talk about our show, but I genuinely mean it. Roll Britannia rules, and I'm glad to be on this podcast.
Thanks you so
for
much.
Reaching across the pond.
Yeah.
Well, that was a brilliant interview. I mean, my favorite part was when they spoke about how, like, even after your turn is done, you can't just sit back and switch off.
Yes.
There is no hiding.
Guys,
The camera
which is
is
something
rolled.
that I hadn't thought about for when we go and do our video.
Oh, have you
Really?
not? Oh.
Yeah.
I've been practicing reactions in the mirror and everything.
Same.
You know, you've got to really nail that surprise, sparkle surprise, and all that kind of thing.
This is my shock
It's like-
face.
Even when you're not acting, you're always acting.
Yeah.
When someone else says a line, you need to act.
It's not
That's why
about
they call
acting,
it
it's about reacting.
reacting.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring just a picture of me to use as a screensaver.
It's true though, because obviously as an audio medium, you know, you can sort of come off mic slightly, but when you're in a studio, obviously you're always on, because you never know when they're going to use that footage of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people will notice if you leave the table to go and put pizzas in the oven.
Yeah.
Well, stop being hungry then.
That's impossible.
We'll have people to put pizzas in the oven for us.
We'll have a
That's
pizza
what-
guy.
That's
Oh
what
my
made
God.
it, right?
Yeah.
There's someone else
Absolutely.
putting pizza.
They won't bring you a pizza. They'll just bring you the oven.
They didn't bring that up in the interview with you, James, did they? That they had a pizza guy just off camera at all stages.
No,
of
they had
the,
an oven guy. I keep
oven
telling
guy.
you.
Oh, sorry, yes. He doesn't
that
bring
in
you
the
pizza.
bloopers?
He brings you an oven.
Yeah.
The bits we
That's the
didn't
bit we
hear.
cut out.
Slightly
is it?
off-stage oven. They just wheel in.
What, the Wallace and Gromit oven? It's just rolled in.
It's on legs.
I think that the thing is that we're all getting a little bit giddy about the idea of that level of funny success and things like that, but they've made it almost realistic, as they sort of mentioned in the interview, is that they went from a living room conversation, kind of like, I don't know, when James accosts you in the back of a car and goes, do you want to do a D&D show maybe? It's a sort of very humble beginnings of just mates having a conversation. Never seen that before. And then suddenly 3 years later, getting closer to that time frame, they're starting to look at making TV shows, and it's their dream is a reality, and they get to do, like I said, they got a little bit lucky, but they worked really hard for it to get to that stage of, you know, their realization where they're walking on set and someone's designed it and they've got a showrunner who's going, no, you can't go in yet, and he's like, but this is partly my show. No, you can't go in yet.
But you're still a player and you're not allowed to find out.
There's secrets you're not allowed to know. It's just so cool. And
what I found really fascinating about it is that obviously it was nice to hear that they consider it relatively similar as a process, making a TV show adventure versus making it as just a podcast, but also, like you say, that kind of that they've kept that kind of spirit of, oh no, you can't go into the studio yet because you're a player that we need to capture you seeing it for the first time. That was really cool, and the fact that obviously their whole intent and their ethos behind the show was that they weren't gonna, even though it was on TV and it was being filmed, they weren't going to do anything that you couldn't necessarily do in a home game. So they weren't going to do recreations of stuff, or they weren't going to do animation, like a whole host of animation. So yeah, I thought that was really, really nice to see, and it shows that obviously, like, they really love D&D, and two, they are knowledgeable enough as creators to kind of have that understanding that if you divorce it from what the TTRPG game is, then people won't necessarily be able to follow along or learn the skills like they did. I thought that.
But it's also an enjoyment level that they seem to sort of, because he's obviously Ned's a player, and so and so we've got that perspective of almost like an audience member. And so from when they were saying that they were creating the show for TV, they wanted to make sure it had got that same vibe as the podcast version. Because I think that that's a really important element, that you display that this is how it's always been. We're just now on camera, because at the end of the day, you create the show in a similar way that we've created a show that people enjoy listening to on there through your ears, and so it's nice to be able to then have that transition straight through onto TV.
I think my favourite part of it all, having watched all 11 episodes of it that I've seen so far, I think there's 22 in total.
Oof.
Is I like the sort of side bits that they take each other away on. I don't know how far you've got, James, but I know Brian and Ned had their side parts that I think you've seen in the kitchen. It's not a kitchen.
There's no
say it's a kitchen.
Because he's just on screen
on the main stage with pizzas.
But the characters further down the line end up taking themselves away.
Oh, really?
To have little side bits, and I thought that was quite a different thing going up. We don't do that, do we? Really?
We do. We don't. I mean, we have done.
We did the whole headphones off.
Yeah, I think we used to
bring
do
that back.
No,
it doesn't work in the same room though.
Cover your ears.
The thing for me is
send everybody away.
Yeah,
they mention it in there is actually, most D&D games have an element of that, because normally what happens is, you have your game, and then during the week or in the weeks between your game, you're messaging your DM, you're having conversations about stuff happening outside of that. The DM might say, okay, well, while this is going on, this is going to have happened, and they'll have a little conversation about what's going on. So really, it was like you said, really, it was what they're doing is just creating those moments that everyone has in games of D&D, and actually we still do. You don't know about this, Paul. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I mean, people have those moments in their games of D&D, but it's done in a way that is consumable for a TV show, which I think is incredibly clever.
Yeah. It is really clever. It is really clever, and it's a really difficult balance to strike, keeping that asymmetric gameplay whilst also making it, like you say, visual and accessible to an audience who, one, it works on both fronts because it works for people who are just getting into it and don't really know what D&D is, like that lady that they said that was doing the live commentary, that content creator that was doing the live commentary, or people who are familiar with it and they can recognize, oh, that is exactly the same as when my DM pulled me out of the room and was like, just so you know, you've got a bomb in your bag, that kind of thing.
I definitely drew a lot of parallels.
What's happening with Derek?
To 100 really quick.
That did get serious. Ovens, pizzas, bomb. Okay.
Yeah. That can happen.
I definitely drew a lot of parallels from where they were saying, similar to our show, you can't disappear off on lengthy side quests, looking around and things, exploring, because it is ultimately a show. It has to get going at a certain trajectory all the time, which I personally really, really like.
I agree. We have a lot. We have a lot less. a lot more freedom, I think, from James than they have, because obviously they've got to get from point A to point B, but within, say, 10, 20, 11 episodes or 22 episodes. Whereas we know we've got to get from point A to point B eventually, and so James is a little bit more lax on, they're enjoying this side quest. If it goes on a little longer, it goes on a little longer. They're having fun. It hasn't got to be, you've only got one episode to solve the entire murder now and you've just found the body kind of thing. It's like they've got to push further and faster than we do. So I think if we do go to if we make that transition hopefully very soon, that is something we're going to have to be very aware of.
It's a unique challenge, especially when, like you say, we've got more freedom in the sense that, we're relatively on our own schedule and on our own time. And when you've got 20 members of crew standing around you and you've rented a studio space and you've got money literally, passing through your fingers every minute, you have to be a lot sharper. So it's a really interesting challenge, one that I am definitely excited to take on when it comes to us doing that kind of thing.
As soon as I know the studio costs, you imagine how fast Jeff's going to be doing stuff. I'll be opening every door instantly.
Well, that brings me on to a really interesting point that I thought was great advice for D&D, but also for life, which is the whole talk less, do more.
Yeah, imagine that. That's going to be something that's rolling out into our show very suddenly.
It's nice to know that other people do it too. It's clearly a common theme, and it's not just us as blithering idiots that take hours to go through a door.
I tell you that.
James is going to go a big crackdown on less blithering idiocy.
There's going to be a lot less discussing every possible outcome, a lot more going, oh gosh, should we talk about this? Oh no, an owlbear.
Yeah.
You definitely started introducing that at the end of...
Bob's going to get real busy.
At the end of that last arc, I think, that we just recorded, you definitely started introducing a few elements more from the listen backs. You can hear sort of like, this is now happening. But we're just chatting. Nope, this is happening. Okay, right, we'll deal with that, and then we'll make a move and we'll decide something. Good. Excellent. It's working.
Do the thing and deal with the consequences.
Bob is
if you don't do the thing, there'll be other consequences.
Noise. Yep, we're on our way.
Bob starts rustling. Oh no!
Run away! Yep, that one.
I love the idea of James adding in an element like a warning flashing light on Bob, like he's getting to a point where he's about to release, and you've left it too long, and now he's releasing it.
The first letter of Bob illuminates. The second letter of Bob illuminates.
Oh, just that would be sick. Option B.
I have to say, I think for me, you sort of covered it a little bit there, Chip, right at the beginning. It's just that concept that, we started very much in a case of, shall we make a D&D show? I think they went kind of whole hog and started with, so we've got a successful D&D TV show. Let's work backwards from there, and where do we start?
Yeah.
And the fact that they cast their show as well is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean they sort of started from the end point, and I think that's it's what I like to call the Bill Bailey way of structuring jokes. Is how they've done that. He likes to start with a laugh and work backwards and say, what would cause that exact amount of mirth, and then work backwards from there. They've started with a successful D&D show and worked backwards from there. Yeah. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there, guys. I think
absolutely.
We should just go ahead and say, right, we have a successful D&D TV show. What do we need to do?
Can we just cut out the middle and just go, we have like £4 million, and then, there we go.
Yeah. And work backwards from there. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
I think the next step back would be the TV show, the successful TV show, so I might just skip to stage.
I think another thing that did surprise me that Ned actually said that he was a fan of the show.
Yeah, that blew my mind.
That was cool. That was cool.
So when I was initially talking to him to set up the interview, when he said that, I was just like, "You've heard of us?
You know who we are?
Having heard of
You know
us.
who I am.
How?
How? Because we're awesome. That's how.
Yeah, it always blows my mind when people have heard of us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, chaps, for being here. Thank you ever so much to Brian and Ned from Encounter Party for taking the time to talk to the wonderful James. And also, thank you so much for listening and for all of the support every single day and every single week. So look out for the next episode of Parley. But if you simply can't wait to hear more from the crew of Roll Britannia, you just jump in then. Someone just jump in.
No, I just said, come on, Tom, you can get this, because we had trouble with the podcatchers last time.
I'm just going to say podcast. Look out for the next episode of Parley. Sorry, you've got me off now. You did this every time.
Mate. Sorry.
Come on, Tom, you've got this.
Yeah, the motivational support line that throws him off completely.
So look out for the next episode of Parley. But if you simply can't wait to hear more from the crew of Roll Britannia, then you can hear us on all good podcatchers out there, where we have new episodes coming out cocking it up every time. I'm just going to shut you guys down.
Just minimise that window.
So look out for the next episode of Parley. But if you simply can't wait to hear more from the crew of Roll Britannia, then you can find us on all good podcatchers out there, where we have new episodes coming out every single Wednesday. There are over 200 episodes in the series so far, so there's plenty for you to catch. Oh my fucking god. There are over 200 episodes in the series so far, so there's plenty for you to listen to. Not only that, but you can check out our Patreon, our merch store, and even drop into our very active Discord server. All the links are in the episode description. So it's goodbye from me, goodbye from all of them.
Goodbye.
Bye. Excellent. Bye. And thank you very much for listening to Roll Britannia Parley.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.